All right, obviously, futures getting a big boost from these reports. The Senate is looking to end the shutdown, but it seems important to note that last week, the sell-off, it didn't seem like it was that closely tied to the shutdown. Shutdown was a factor, but it seemed like it was about valuations in tech. Have those concerns just been eased with the idea that we might see an end of the government shutdown?
I think it's a positive short-term impulse for sure. If you look at the move on Friday, that was certainly boosted by the prospect of a potential deal that the Democrats offered at the time. But I would say, the pullback in tech is probably a broader sentiment shift. It's just done so well in recent months. Big tech stocks, IT is up 65% still from the lows in April. So still very much a positive story there.
All right, so we did have a pullback last week, as we mentioned. NASDAQ had its worst week since all the way back in April. I want to look a little bit deeper below the surface because a lot of times we talk about the biggest companies and the biggest names. If you look at the S&P 1500, according to Bespoke, if you look at communication services and tech, those sectors in the S&P 1500, that includes the mid caps and the small caps, they're both in correction right now. Actually, they're both in bear market territory, big pullbacks from their 52-week highs. Is that a concerning sign below the surface of the biggest names that we're seeing this kind of move?
Yeah, I do think that sentiment is shifting a little bit. I think if you look at the last couple of months, breadth has been quite narrow, and the moves really were not necessarily driven by fundamentals. If you thought about earnings in particular in those areas, they actually were very strong. CapEx guidance remains quite strong, but I think it is just a function of the fact that the market has gotten quite narrow, and you've seen a pullback and a broadening in more defensive areas.
All right. It was Palantir earnings that seemed to kind of spark this sell-off and all these valuation concerns. Got a number of earnings coming up this week. We got CoreWeave, which is obviously very closely tied to the AI trade, and NVIDIA, Cisco, Sony, Applied Materials, SoftBank as well. Are there any one of these names and their earnings that you see having an outsized impact on the market?
Yeah, I think NVIDIA is certainly the number one report that's gonna come out here over the next couple of weeks. I think that certainly will have an impact on the overall guidance. I think my expectation is that the fundamentals remain quite strong, but I think what we have seen is a pullback on the sentiment front. And also the fact that great earnings or beats have not been rewarded, and so that's something to look out for here in the next couple of weeks.
All right, you're also looking at high quality stocks in the consumer space and also healthcare stocks. The consumer one is the one I have a question about. Healthcare, we've seen a big rebound. Healthcare is one of the best performing sectors this quarter, and in just recent weeks. But the consumer, aren't there still a lot of questions about the ability of the consumer to spend, some of the sentiment out there after some of these disruptions to not only SNAP, but the potential disruption to healthcare that could be coming up?
Yeah, I think those stocks are depressed, or going back to the inflation period. I think they've seen margins impacted by the cost of goods inflation. Our view would be that those companies have high quality franchises. They have the ability to cut costs and ultimately move back those margin numbers higher. And if you think about a market that is more concerned with the macro backdrop, we do think that those are areas that will provide some ballast in people's portfolios.